Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be creating this multi-step form with Auth.js, Drizzle, Neon, Zod, and React Hook form. So let's take a look. But we'll also be using Shadcn for some of our UI components as well. So let's go ahead and fill out this form. I'm just going to type in just a random email. Click on continue. At the bottom here, we can also log in if we already have an account. Now it's asking me for my developer skill level. I think I am intermediate. Click on continue. And now it's asking me to choose a password. Let's go ahead and try to choose a password here. As you can see, we also add a password strength checker as well at the bottom here. So let's try to make a strong password. And we also got to confirm our password as well. Click on submit. So I must have mistyped something because it's saying the password does not match. So let's try to type in the right password here. Click on submit. And now it says it looks like we already have an account. We must log in. So inside of our Neon database, this is where all of our users are being tracked. So as you can see, we got first name, last name, location, email, our hash passwords, and also skill level of each user. So it says I already have an account. So we'll also be building this login form as well. And if you don't have an account, you can click on sign up and it'll take you to our register form. So let's actually log in. I'll try to log into this email here and click on login. And it says invalid email or password. Let's try to type in the right password now. Click on login. And now we are authenticated. So now let's go ahead and get started on this project. Inside of your terminal in VS Code, we're going to type in the command npx create next app at latest. And we will be using TypeScript. ESLint, no. Tailwind, yes. Source directory, no. App router, yes. And import alias, this is optional. You don't have to use this, but I'll be using it in this project. And let that install. Okay, so let's go ahead and clean up our project a little bit. So inside of public, let's get rid of these two SVGs. And inside of app, we can get rid of this favicon. And inside of this global CSS, we can delete everything except for this root here. Let's get rid of all of this stuff at the bottom. All right. And inside of layout, actually, let's head over to page and let's get rid of everything inside of this main tag. And we can just return a div that just says hello world. All right. And we can get rid of this import. And now let's head over to our layout because we're about to install a new font because we won't be using this enter font. We're going to use Poppins. All right. That means we got to change this to Poppins. And the subset can stay Latin, but we will need to install some weights. So do a comma here. And then we add our weight. So we'll be using 100, 200, 300, 4, 8, and 7. Okay. And we could change the metadata if we want. This is just a little practice project. We're just creating a form. So you don't have to do this, but it's really important to do this, especially if you're planning on deploying the website. So here we could change this to Poppins. And up here we can change this to Poppins. Okay, perfect. So I say we install Shadcn and then install all of the UI components we'll be using for this project. So let's head over to Shadcn. And let's click on get started. Installation, we're using Next.js. And let's copy this command over. I'm using npm. And paste that inside of your VS Code terminal and let that install. It's going to ask a few questions. All right, so which style would you like to use? We're using New York, and we could just keep neutral. CSS variables, yes. And this is going to make us a components folder, I believe, or maybe it's going to create that once we install our first component. But yeah, it didn't create our UI folder or our components folder. So let's go ahead and install all of our components we'll be using for this project, so that way we don't have to keep coming here. So head over to components, and the first one we're going to be using is button. So let's hit down a button and let's install that. Copy this code, install that. And while that's installing, let's head over to the next one. So we're going to be installing form. Scroll down and we're going to add that. All right. And see, it created that components folder inside of our project. And we also got that UI folder as well. So this is where all of our components that we install from Shadcn is going to go. All right. So we got form. And I believe that, okay, so file button already exists. Would you like to overwrite? Let's just click yes. So I guess when you install form, it also installs button and label as well. So all we had to do is just install form, I guess. All right, so let's head over to input. Surprised it doesn't install input as well. You would think it does, right? All right, install that. And the next one is, so we got label, progress. We'll be using a progress bar for our multi-step form. Copy that. Paste that in there. And last one is radio group. So we'll be using this for step 2 of our multi-form. Copy that and paste that in there as well. All right, and just like that, the power of Shadcn, we have a bunch of UI components already ready to be used. So we got button, form, input, label, progress, and radio group. Nice. Okay, so now let's head over to Neon database. And what you want to do is create an account if you don't have one. So head over to neon.tech. So I'm already signed in and I'll be using this multi-step. So once you create an account, you're going to be on this page. And your projects, if this is your first time using it, it should be empty. You want to click on this create project and just, as you can see, I already hit the limit for one project. So then it's just going to ask you to provide a name, and that's all you got to do. So once you do all of that, you're going to be pushed to this page here. And this is where we're going to receive our database URL. So this connection string here, you want to make sure you click show password. And we're going to hide this up in our .env file. Please don't use mine. I'm going to try to change it before I upload this video. Always get some people using my database URL all the time. I log in and I just see random stuff uploaded to it. I always forget to change it. So copy that, and then we're going to head over to our project. Let me close out all of this stuff. And we're going to create a file, and this is going to be our .env file. Okay. And if you don't want this uploaded to GitHub, you want to make sure you add this .env to the git ignore .env. All right, save that. It's probably already on here. We got env.local. All right. So we're going to add that string, that URL to database _URL, and we're just going to paste that in there, and I believe it has to go in quotes like that. All right, perfect. So we got our Neon database URL. So now it's time to add Drizzle and get everything connected. All right, so head over to Google and just type in Drizzle Neon, and that should take us to the page that we want. I'm going to click on this second one here. And here, this is showing us how to install Drizzle with our Neon database. So we can start from the top. So we got to install Drizzle ORM and also Drizzle Kit. So let's copy these two commands, get over to our project, and I'm going to paste that in there. All right. So while that's installing, let's go see what's on number 2. So number 2, it says we have to install NeonDB /serverless. Let's copy this, head over to our project, and let's wait for this to finish first. Okay, so let's add that npm I NeonDB /serverless. Let that install, and let's head back over. So it says we have to install this .env as well. So let's install that. All right. And now it says create a new Neon project. So we already did this, and we stored our database URL inside of our .env file. We already got our connection string. We don't need that. So we can skip down here to number 3. So we got to make a db.ts file. So on Drizzle, it says that their db.ts file is in their source folder. So we're actually going to create a different folder. We're going to create ours, and it's going to be called server. And in here, we're going to make a db.ts file. All right. So our database configuration is a little bit different than the one that's on Drizzle. So we're going to create our own. But before we do that, we're actually going to skip down to step number 4 and create our schema first. And this schema file is going to be inside of our server folder as well. So let's create that file, schema.ts. All right. And just to save us some time, I'm just going to paste it from GitHub. We'll go over it. I just don't want to waste time just doing a boring old schema. So yeah, we're making 3 imports from Drizzle. And here is our skill level enum. And enum, I believe it stands for enumerations. And it's basically a way to define a set of name values. So in this case, we're using it for our skill level: beginner, intermediate, advanced, expert, and master. And then down here is our table. So we're taking in ID, first name, last name, location, email, image, password, and skill level. And the default skill level is beginner. So yeah, just regular old Drizzle schema. It's nothing too out of this world. So yeah, just copy this over from GitHub, and now let's head over to our db.ts file. All right, so we're gonna make 3 imports. We're gonna import Neon from NeonDB /serverless, and also our Drizzle from Drizzle /ORM /Neon HTTP. And we're also importing our schema, the one that we just created, and we're gonna import and we're gonna use a star, and we're importing that as schema from server /schema. All right. So first, let's go ahead and create a SQL connection using our Neon driver. So to do that, we're going to do a const SQL. That's going to equal Neon, and it's going to take in our database URL. So process, I'm spelling process wrong, process.env.database _ URL. Okay. And we can do an exclamation point there. All right. So now we need to do a export const, I cannot type today, db, and that's going to equal drizzle. And we're going to send over our SQL connection. So SQL. We're also going to send over our schema. I'm going to do brackets. It's going to be schema. And then we can also do logger is going to be true. All right. So what this is basically, you'll see it in action once we do our server actions. It's going to show our SQL queries being executed inside of the console. I spelled cost. Oh my god. Okay, there we go. Export const db drizzle SQL schema. All right, perfect. So that is our db.ts file. All right, let's head back over to Drizzle and let's see what else we have to do. So we got to create a drizzle.config in the root of our project. Let's do that. So inside of the root, let me close out of this. So drizzle.config.ts. Okay. And it says we have to copy over this, copy this over, and let's paste that in there. So our schema is not coming from our source folder. Source folder. Our schema is coming from our server. So let's actually change this to server. And then our migrations, we're actually going to have them inside of our server folder as well. So let's do server. And make sure we add a slash there. Okay, and that's correct. Dialect, Postgres, SQL, and then our URL is our database URL. All right, so this is looking good. All right, so let's actually see this in action. I think all we have to do now is apply changes to database. Let's copy this command. Let's open up our terminal and let's add that command in. Okay, so that created a migrations folder inside of our server folder. So now I think all we have to do is let's head over to our database. I just want to see if it created. I don't think it created the tables just yet. I think what we have to do is let's run a npx drizzle -kit push, and this should push our schema up to our database. All right, so we got changes applied, and let's refresh, and hopefully we see our changes. Perfect. So we got our user. Let me just zoom in some. Yep, so we got a user, ID, first name, last name, location, email, image, password, and skill level. So it's same thing that's inside of our schema. Nice. All right, so now I think it's time to add our authentication. So now let's go ahead and try to link up Auth.js with Drizzle and Neon. So let's close out of this and close up all of our folders. Let's head over to our browser and let's look up Auth.js. All right, Auth.js. Let's do get started, Next.js, and let's copy over this command. So npm install Next-Auth at beta, and let's install that. Head back over to Auth.js and see what else we have to do. So we have to create an auth secret. Let's copy this as well, and let's paste that inside of the terminal. That's going to create us an auth secret, and I think that's going to create a .env. Yep, so it created a .env.local with our auth secret inside. All right, close out of that and configure. So it says create a auth.ts file. So we're going to hold off on copying this, but we can create the file. Ours is going to be a little bit different because we'll be using Drizzle. What is it? Drizzle, a Drizzle adapter. So I was going to look a little bit different than that. So inside of server, this is where our auth.ts file is going to go. All right, and we can close out of that .env.local. All right, so it says we have to create our route handlers, and this is going to be inside of our app. And so it's got app, API, auth, and then we got to spread out Next-Auth and then our route.ts. So let's copy this. So inside of our app, we can actually create a folder and do parentheses auth like that. So this is where all our authentication is going to go. So let's create another folder, API, and let me go see what it was. So API auth. So in this folder, another folder, auth. And then in this folder, we're going to do brackets, spread operator, Next-Auth, close brackets. And then in this folder, our route.ts. All right. And then in here, we can just paste that. And in this, so it's /auth. So this is coming from our server. So do server /auth, I believe. Just skip this for now. We will get an error there. We'll come back to that. So next is our middleware. So we don't need that yet. So now we just need to head over to providers, actually adapters, sorry, Drizzle. And now we need to try to link Drizzle with Auth.js. So we don't need Drizzle ORM, but we do need this Auth/Drizzle adapter. So let's copy this. We already got Drizzle kit as well installed. Open up our terminal, npm I auth/drizzle adapter. Let's paste that in. And let's scroll down, Postgres. So this is the schema. We don't need this. We created our own. Let's scroll down. So here is the auth.ts file we'll be using. Let's copy this. And let's head over to our project and let's paste that in here. All right, so instead of DB coming from this schema.ts, our DB is going to just come from /DB because it's right here inside of our folder. All right, so inside of the API route, just make sure you the handlers are going to come from @server/auth. All right, so we can close out of that. We shouldn't have to open that anymore. So we do have to configure some things in here. First thing we're going to do, we should install bcrypt. I'm going to do npm I bcrypt. All right. And I believe we also got installed the bcrypt types as well. So then we also going to do npm I @types /bcrypt. All right, let that install. So let's head over to our auth.ts file and let's configure this. So we need to import credentials, and then we're also going to import bcrypt. So we got Next-Auth already imported. We got our Drizzle adapter. We got our database. We need to import EQ from Drizzle ORM. That's coming from Drizzle ORM, and I'm actually going to move this up there just so it can just look a little bit better. And this bcrypt can go underneath here as well. I just realized something, that we didn't create a login schema using Zod, because we're going to use that schema to validate the credentials inside of our auth.ts file. So what I want to do is let's hold off on finishing this, and we're actually going to install Zod now, and we're just going to create those two schemas. So we're going to create a register schema and a login schema. So let's head over to our terminal and then npm I Zod. Okay. And I know we haven't seen anything on the screen yet. We haven't even started our server, but most of this is back-end stuff. So that's why, we haven't needed to see anything yet, but we're going to get to styling up our form and everything here soon. Now that we got Zod installed, let's go ahead and create a folder called types. All right, and this is where all of our Zod schemas will go. But in this case, it's just a little small, quick project. We're just going to have a login schema and a register schema. So login schema .ts, and then also a register schema .ts. All right. So just to save us some time, I'm just going to copy over these two schemas from GitHub and just go over it right quick. Don't need to type in the boring stuff. So we're importing star as z from Zod, and here is our enum again. And it's just, our skill level enum. And here is our actual register schema. So we got a z.object, email string, password string, first name, last name, location, and confirm password is string. And then our skill level is our skill level enum here. All right, very simple. And then our login schema is super simple. It is just a email and password. And we got a little bit of form validation here as well. So yeah, email is required and password is required as well. So this is our login schema. So now we can head over to our auth and we can use these schemas to validate the credentials. So server auth.ts. All right. So inside of this providers, we're going to do credentials. All right, authorize. And that's going to equal async. It's going to take in credentials. And that's going to return a bunch of stuff. All right. So let me just make sure. So we got handlers off, sign in, sign out, Next-Auth. We got an adapter there. All right. So first thing first, like I said, we're going to take our login schema and validate the credentials with that. So what we can do is do a const validated fields, and that's going to equal our login schema dot safe parse, and then we're going to safe parse the credentials. Okay. So now we're going to have a bunch access to a bunch of autocompletes inside of this function. So first things first, we're going to check if our validate fields is successful. So we're going to do if validated fields dot success. We're going to do a const email password, and that's going to equal our validated fields dot data. Okay, so we're destructuring out our email and password from the data. Okay, so now we're going to find the user in the database by email. So right underneath this validated data here, make some space. We're just going to do a const user. That's going to equal await db query users, and then find first. I don't know why we're getting an error there. We're going to fix that. And then, like I said, we're just finding the user's email in the database by email. So now we're going to compare the provided password with the hash password inside of the database. So right underneath here, we're going to do a const password match, and that's going to equal await bcrypt dot compare, and then we're going to compare the password and also the user dot password. If the passwords match, that's when we're going to return our user. So we're going to do if password match. That's when we're going to return our user. Okay, perfect. And then here we could just return null. All right, I still don't know why we're getting an error there. Let's make sure. Let me just check my schema right quick. Actually, I think I know why it's happening. So we actually have to import users from our schema. So users, that's going to be coming from our schema folder. Schema file, and that should get rid of that. All right, so after these brackets there, we're going to specify our custom page for authentication. So we'll be using the /login page. So let's do pages, and then we're going to do sign in, and that's going to be /login. All right, that is our login page. Let's add a comma there. So let's do secret. It's going to equal process .env .Next-Auth. And now we can add a comma there, and now we can do our session. Session is just going to be strategy JWT. All right. So I think that is it for our auth.ts file. All right, so the time has come. We are about to start our form. So there are two packages we're about to install before we do that we'll be using. So we'll be using React Hook Form. And if you guys haven't used this before, this is just a form library for managing forms in React. It helps handle the form state, the validation, and submission as well. So let's click on get started and let's copy this. All right. And then there's one more package we're about to install before we do our forms, and that is the hook form resolver. So to get Zod to work with React hook form, we're gonna need to install this resolver. So let's do React hook form resolver. All right, let's copy this. Copy and paste. Head over to the GitHub repo and just make sure you guys download this image. This is the image we're going to be using for our register page. And you can pop that right inside of our public folder. All right. And now we can actually go ahead and start up our server because we're about to use that photo that we just downloaded. So it's npm run dev. And then we can head over to our localhost 3000. And we can keep our Neon database open. I'm going to close out of Shadcn. And we can close that out. We can close out of Auth and our schema. And inside of app, inside of Auth, we're going to create a folder. And this is going to be called register. All right. And in this folder, this is where we're going to have a page.tsx. Okay, so let's actually head over to our project. So we got our hello world, and let's just go to register. So localhost 3000/register. And now we should see page here because we're in a register route now. Okay, so in here, let's do a div. And this is going to have a class name of flex, a min height of screen. And then in here, we're going to have a div, another div with a class name of sticky. We're going to do a top of 0, height of screen, a width of 1/3, a BG, a blue 400. And then we're also going to have our background image here, but first we're going to head over to the Tailwind config because there's actually something we have to do in here that I totally forgot about. All right, in here we're actually going to get rid of this background image here. Actually, I'm going to select all and I'm just going to paste that in. So yeah, we're going to grab our form image. So we're basically creating a Tailwind class. We're extending the Tailwind classes with this. So now inside of our page, we can use bg-form image. And our form image is there. We're also going to do a bg cover. And there we go. Nice. All right, so we're going to keep that div there. And then underneath this div is going to be our multi-step form. So we haven't created this yet. So let's actually head over to components. And in here, we're going to create a folder. And this is going to be called, let's just name it Auth. This is where all our authentication is going to go. Authentication components going to go. So we're going to have a multi-step form. All right, and let's go ahead and create that component. So multi-step-form.tsx. All right, and let's just export it. And that way we can import it here inside of our register page, right underneath here, multi-step form. Okay, we should see it there. We see hey. So for our multi-step form, we're going to have different steps, and this multi-step form component is going to hold all of those steps. So inside this folder, we're going to have step 1, step 2, step 3, and then we're going to import them all to here. So I say we start working on the actual multi-step form and get some of the functionality working, like the handle next function and the handle previous function. And also we got to set some state for our form data as well. First things first, let's do a const current step, and then a set current step. All right, and that's going to equal use state. Make sure you import that from React, and that's the default's going to be 1. And then we can also do some TypeScript. This is going to be a number. All right, and we can also do our form data as well. So we can do a const form data, and by default that's going to be email, empty string, password is an empty string, first name is an empty string, last location is an empty string, and then last name is also empty. All right, and make sure you add these commas here or this won't work. All right, that is our form data, and now we can create our handle next step function. So let's do a const handle next step, and it's going to take in some data. All right, so first things first is going to set form data, and what it's going to do is take in the previous data, and then it's going to return our previous but spread it out, the prev, and then also our data as well. All right, so we're using a spread operator on prev, and this is basically to keep all the previous form data. All right, and then on data we're using a spread operator to add or update with the new data. All right, so this is just going to ensure we keep all the existing data, and also add and update with the new data as well, if that makes sense. Okay. All right, and then last but not least, we're going to set current step, and then this is just going to take our current step plus 1. All right. All right, so this is just basically going to turn this number to 2, then change it to 3, and then 3 is the max. All right. And now we just need to do our handle previous step, and all this is going to do is just to set our current step to our current step minus 1. Okay, very simple there. And here we're going to have a div with a class name of width 2/3, pattern of 8, flex call. All right, scroll down some, and then in this div we're gonna have another div with a class name of margin bottom 8, and here we're gonna have an h1, and in this h1 this is going to hold a function that we're going to create, but we're not going to create this just yet. So in here we could just do let's just add this form like that. Okay. All right, and then underneath here is where our progress bar is going to go. So we can just do, I'm just going to add a little comment, progress bar, and then just comment that out. Okay, so underneath this div here, actually this progress bar is going to go right underneath the h1. Let's put this under there like that. All right. Underneath this div here is we're going to have another div, and this div is going to have a class name of flex grow, flex call, justify center, max width is going to be MD, and max auto, and also width of full. All right, and now in here is where we're going to have our steps. All right, so we're going to have step 1. So if current step is 1, that's when we're going to show step 1. If current step is 2, that's when we're going to have to show step 2, and then same for 3. So let's start with step 1. So we're going to do brackets. So current step triple equals to 1. We're going to do the and that's when we're going to return our step 1 function here. I mean, our step 1 component. We haven't created yet, so let's just add it here though. Step 1. All right, Right, and this step one component is going to take in our onNext function. Right, handle next step. Right, sorry, I said onNext function. Our handle next step function. All right, so let's actually create this. So inside of multi-step folder, we're going to do step-1, and now let's import it here. Right underneath here, import step 1. Get rid of that error. So we're not taking in the props, that's why we're getting that. All right, so let's go ahead and head over to step 1. As you can see, we see hi here. Got our title there. This says form. Actually, we probably should just do our progress bar now. I mean, really simple to do. We need to first import the progress bar. Import progress from our components UI/progress. And now what we're going to do underneath here, we're going to do a const progress value, and that's going to just equal our current step divided by 3, because there's only 3 steps, and then we just do times 100. All right, and now what we can do is for this progress bar, add it there, progress, and this takes props, takes a value, and the value is just going to be our progress value. And then we can also do a class name of h2. All right, let's take a look. There we go. As you can see, it's divided up into 3. So we're currently on step 1. So instead of having form here, we can actually change this out with text, and we're going to use a switch statement for that. So let me just copy this over. So right underneath here, we're going to do a const step text, and this is just a switch statement. So if it's step 1, this is where we're going to show step 1, create account. Case 2, basically step 2. This is where we're going to show step 2, skill level. And then step 3, probably should change this, add create password, because this is our create password step there. And then default is just return empty strings there. All right, so now in here, this h1, we can do step text, and then close that out. And now we should see step 1, create an account. And we can add a class name to this h1. Class name, we could do a text 2xl, and also a font bold, and also a margin bottom 2. All right, perfect, nice. Now I believe all we got to do is head over to our step 1 component, and we can start that out, and then we'll do step 2 and then 3, and then do our server actions. And then we're also going to create a login form as well. So let's go ahead and do all this stuff now. All right, let's first make this a client component. We use client. All right, and let's go ahead and take in our prop, which is on next. All right, and then we can also do a type for our props. Let's do type step 1 props. That's just going to equal on next. That takes in values, which is let's just keep it values for now, because we didn't make this schema yet. And that's just going to return void. So we're going to get a TypeScript error for values, but we can add this to our props here. And this is just step 1 props. Okay. So we're going to do a const form. That's going to equal use form. Let's make sure you import that. And what this is going to do, we also need to make a schema to set up the form validation with Zod. with the Zod schema. And that's where this Zod resolver comes in play, because it converts the Zod schema to a format React hook form can use. So let's actually create that first. So let me just comment that out right quick. So right over top of, we could just do it right here. Let's do a export const first step schema. That's going to equal Z. Make sure you do Z, and we can import Z from Zod.object. All right, so email Z string, and that's the email, first name Z string, location, and last name is a string. Okay, so now up here for values, what we can do is infer this type. So we can do Z.infer, and that is a type of first step schema. All right, perfect. And now on this use form hook, we can add that as well to Z.infer type of first step schema, do parentheses brackets, and that's, we also got to add our resolver, and that is Zod resolver. Not sure why we didn't get the autocomplete there. And this, we're gonna send over our first step schema. All right. Let's import Zod resolver. I know we installed it. Not sure why we Zod resolver, and that's going to come from at hookform/resolvers/Zod. All right. Now we also need our onSubmit for our form. So let's do const onSubmit. First is going to take in our values. And just like up top, that is just a Z.infer type of first step schema. Okay. Only thing we're going to do here is just do on next, and then just send over our values. Right, so we're gonna have a div, and in here it's going to be a h3 with a class name of text3xl, font bold, and then in this h3 we could just do register for an account. So we're gonna have a p tag with a class name of text gray 500, and then the text small, a margin top 3, and then in here we're just going to say let's start with a little bit of information. Let's take a look at this. All right, nice. All right, so underneath this p tag, next we're going to have a div. And this div is going to have a class name of margin top 10. All right. So we're about to use some of the stuff out of our form UI component that we installed from Shadcn. And we're going to import form, form control, form field, form item, form label, and also form message. And that is coming from our UI form folder. Let's go ahead and start with our form. So in here, we got to make sure we spread out our form. We got to do ... form. And now we actually do a regular form, HTML form like that. And we can also add our onSubmit since we already created it. onSubmit form handle submit. And we're just going to send onSubmit. All right, so and then in here, I have a div. And this div is going to have a class name of grid col2, a gap of 10, and a margin bottom of 5. All right, and we're going to have our first form field here. And the first one's going to be first name. So I would open the docs for Shadcn on how to do the form, how they do forms with Shadcn. But I mean, it's very simple. It's not, the normal just add the input and tag. So it's a lot more to it. So with Shadcn form component, we got to do a form field. And that's a self-closing tag. And then in here, this is where we add everything. So we got to add control. And that is form.control. And then we can also add the name for this field. The name. And this is going to be first name. All right. And then we also do render. And this is where we add our form label, form control, and also our input as well inside of this render. All right. So we got to do brackets. We got to do parentheses, brackets again. And then we do field. All right. And this is where we add our form item. But once we do this one time, we don't got to do this again. We can just copy and paste this whole entire form field. All right. And then we do form label. And this is where we add our first name. Like that. Let's take a look at this. Make sure everything is working correctly. All right. So we got our form label there. Underneath this form label, this is where we're going to have our form control. All right, and this is where we add our input, which I believe we have to import. So make sure you import that. All right, and we got to make sure we spread our field. And this will also have a placeholder. Enter first name here. Okay. And then we can also do a type of text. All right, let's take a look. Nice. All right, so we got that. And that is our first form field. So luckily, because I'm lazy, we're going to just copy this whole entire form field. And then right underneath, we're going to paste it again. And now we just change it up. So instead of first name here, this is where our last name is going to go. And then for our form label, we could just do last name. All right. And then scrolling down, I believe we just changed the placeholder here. Enter last name here. Okay, let's take a look. Nice. All right. And now we need another one. So, but we wanted to make sure this is outside of this div here. So outside of this grid, this is where we're going to have another one. So make sure it's right underneath that div. We're going to paste it again. And this one's going to be email. Change this to email and then change the label to email and then enter email here. All right. And then type can be email as well. Take a look. Nice. Perfect. All right. And now we need location. So underneath here, I'm going to paste it again. And this one is location. And location. And then enter. I believe that's it for the inputs. As you can see, they're a little bit too close. So we can add a margin bottom 5 on our email one. So for our form item, we can add a class name and we could just do a margin bottom 5 like that. All right, perfect. I spread it out a little bit. Nice. And now we just need our button. So right underneath, actually still inside of our form, right underneath this form item here, this form field, we're gonna have a button. And it's gonna be coming from Shadcn. So UI button, UI component, and it's going to say continue. And then we can also have a class name of margin top 5, and then a width of full. And then we could also do a type submit. Perfect. Let's actually fill this out and see what happens. Email, Riley, and now we're on step 2. Perfect. All right. Hopefully when I refresh, it goes back. Okay, went back to step 1. Nice. All right, so that is our step 1 form. I believe we did everything in here. This is perfect. So now let's go ahead and do step 2. Let's head over to, let's actually create that first. We'll do step 2. Now inside of our multi-step form, we got current step 1 there. Now down here, we could do if our current step triple equals to 2, and that's when we're going to return step 2. All right. So this component takes 2 props. So this is going to take on next as well, which is our handle next step function, but it's also going to take on back, and this is going to be our handle previous. All right, so let's head over to the step 2 component. All right, so instead of our step 2 component, first thing we're going to do is make this a client component, and we can also create our schema as well. So same thing like we did in the first one. Let me go and import z from Zod, and this is very simple: skill level, z.enum, and beginner, intimate, advanced, expert, and master. And then we can also make an array for these as well, because we're going to be mapping through these just to save us some time on coding. All right, so let's go ahead and take in our props. So we're taking in on next and also on back as well. And we need to set our types for these props. So that's going to be interface, step 2 props, on next. Same thing like the first step 1. We're just doing a z.infer, type of our type 2 schema. And then on back is just a function that just returns void. Let's go ahead and add this to our props. So step 2 props. Give that a save. All right, so same thing like we did in our first one. So we're doing the cons form, and we got to make sure we import use form, and that's going to be z type of step 2 schema. We also got to import Zod resolver, and that's coming from at hook form resolver / Zod. And then our on submit is the same one as our step 1, but the only difference is this is step 2 schema. All right, in here we're gonna have a div, and let's actually head over to step 1, because I'm gonna copy over this h3 and this p tag. We could have made like an auth card or something as well, but I was just mainly focused on our multi-step form functionality. But if you want, you could make an auth card, because we're going to use this again inside of our step 3 as well. So instead of register account, we can do developer skill level. All right, and then here we could just do a little strong emoji. Every expert was once a beginner. Where do you stand? All right. All right, so underneath this p tag, this we're gonna have a div, and this div is gonna have a class name of margin top 10. And in here, same thing. So we're gonna have our form and our form field, form label. Let's go ahead and import everything we need from our UI folder. Right. So form. We have to spread out our form. And then in here is going to be form. Then we can add our on submit, and that's just going to be form dot handle submit, and then on submit. We can also add a class name as well. Class name space y6. All right, so inside of this form, let's head over to step 1. And we're going to copy one of these form fields, because we're going to just switch it switch up. Let's not copy over this one actually. Let's copy over another one. Copy over this one here. All right, copy that, and then head over to step 2, and we could paste that in there. All right, let's actually take a look at everything. What we can do to see the changes, that way we don't got to keep filling out this form and clicking on step 2. Let's head over to our multi-step form, and then we can probably change this to 2 and then change this to 1, just so that way we can see what we're currently working on instead of having to redo all of that. Okay, we are getting an error because we don't got input, so we don't need input for this component, so we can get rid of that. And then last, the name should be skill level. All right, perfect. Okay, so in here, in this form field, we're going to have, so we got our form item, and then we can have a class name on here of space y3. Okay, and then we're gonna have a form label, and instead of last name, it's going to be what is your skill level. Okay, and add a question mark there as well. All right, so under the form label, we got our form control. And here's where we're going to have our radio group. Radio group, and that is coming from our components folder. All right, so this takes props as well. So it takes on value change. And that's going to be our field dot change, dot on change, sorry. Then also take a default value, and that's going to be our field dot value. All right, and then we can also do a class name on here, flex call, and then a space y2. Okay, I don't think we should see anything yet. All right, so now what we can do is actually map through our skill levels. So we can do skill levels dot map, and do level, and then we can return form item. Okay, and let's add a key so we won't get any errors. Key is just going to be our level, and then class name is going to be flex item center space x3 space y0. Right, and in here we're going to have a form control. This is where we're going to have a radio group item. In here, this takes props. The value of this is just going to be level. Let's take a look. Nice. As you can see, we can click and check. All right, and now we just need a form label. So right underneath this form control, so we're going to have a form label. And in here, it's just going to be our level. All right, take a look. Nice. Still inside of the form, this is where we're going to add our buttons. So in this one, we're going to have a on back button, and then we also want to have a continue button. Let's do a div, and this div is going to have a class name of flex and justify between. And here we're going to have our button, and the first one is just going to be back. I'm going to click, and that's going to be on back. We can also add a variant to this button as well. We can do variant, and we can make this secondary. Quotes secondary. All right, take a look. Nice. So we got our back button there, and now we just need our, we copy this. We need our continue button. So we can remove this variant here. And this, we could just do type submit instead of an on click. And this was just going to say continue. Nice. So with that, we should be able to go to step 2. But in this case, we need to go back and switch this back. So this is step 1 and this is step 2. Nice. So we'll be able to go to step 3. And as you can see, you must fill this out to even continue. So now we're on step 3, which is create a password. So let's go do that step now. All right, so once you create your step 3 component inside of the multi-step folder, we're going to head over to app, auth, and then our register page. Actually, sorry, we're going to head over to the multi-step form component. So that way we can see our changes. So what we're going to do is right underneath step number 2, we're going to do brackets. And then we're going to do the same thing. If current step is triple equals to 3, and that's when we're going to return our step 3. So this step takes 3 props. So it doesn't take a handle next because this is the last step, but it takes our handle. It takes a final submit function that I don't think we created yet. All right, and it's going to be, honestly, for now, what we can do is just up here. Let's create this function right quick. But we're just gonna just for console log hello world or something. All right. So now here, we could just add that for our final submit. For our handle submit. So we get our on back, and then it's also going to take in our form data. And that's going to equal form data. All right, cool. So we got on back, we got handle submit, and we got form data. So now let's head over to our step 3 component and let's start styling this up. Like I said, this is going to be the password. And actually, let's head back here for a second, just so that way we can see our changes. We don't have to fill out the form and go to the next, all the way to the 3rd step. Let's change this to 1. And then let's change step number 1 to 3. Just for now, just so that way we can see everything. So we should just see step 3 here. All right, step 3. So first things first, let's make this a client component. And then let's import our register schema. Let's import Zod resolver. We're going to import use form. We're going to import Z from Zod. And then we're also going to import use state. So this is everything we've been using in the other steps. We're also going to import all of our form UI components. And now we also need to import input and button. So now what I say we do is we do the same thing we did for step 1 and 2. So we need to, first I say we define our schema for this step. So this step is just going to take a password, but it's going to have a very complex schema because we're going to have a password, and then we're also going to have a confirm password schema. So we want to make sure that confirm password matches the password that's been entered. So this is going to take in, let's do a export const. And this is going to be 3rd step schema, right? And then that's just going to return a z.object. And in here, first things first is do password. And that's going to be a z.string. And then we can also define the minimum characters we want this password to be. So we're going to do min. And then it's going to be 8. And then a message that is going to show if it's not 8. You can do message. You could just say password must be at least 8 characters long. All right. And now we need our confirm password. So make sure you do a comma there. And then we're going to do confirm password. All right. So right after this parentheses, all we got to do is we're going to do a dot super refine. And then this is going to take in confirm password, which is up here, and then our password. And there's also, you got to do a comma, ctx, And then we're just going to do check if the confirmed password doesn't match the current password. If they don't match, that's when we're going to use CTX, which stands for, I believe, context object. And this is basically just going to add a custom error. So as you can see, we got code custom, and then we got our message that's going to pop up if the confirmed password does not match our password that we entered. All right. And now we need to define our prop. So let's do interface. Actually, we didn't even take in our props yet. So step 3, remember, I think we take in on back, handle submit, and also our form data. Let's do on back. Actually, let's put these in brackets. So on back, we take in our handle submit, and then we also take in our form data. Okay, let's go ahead and do our types for these. So we got our interface, step 3 props, on back is a void, then our handle submit, and then form data any props there. And that should get rid of all of those errors there. Let's see. All right, so everything's looking good. So now what we're going to do is, if you watch the demo at the beginning, we're going to have a password strength check. And then we're also going to have, like, if the passwords mismatch as well, we're going to have some state for that. So what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and set some state with use state. So right in here, const password strength, set password strength, and that's going to be use state. By default, it's going to be empty quotes. And then our password mismatch and set password mismatch, by default, it will be false. Okay. And now we're going to do the same thing we did inside. I'm just trying to copy some of this stuff over because a lot of this stuff is very repetitive. We did it in step 1 and 2. So in this case, I believe we did this here with our use form hook and the Zod resolver, basically connecting Zod with React hook form. So yeah, same thing. We're doing a const form and then use form, and that's taking in our register schema. We're using our resolver and we're sending over our register schema. But the default values for this one is our form data that we're receiving inside of our props. All right. So what we're going to do, let's do a const check password strength. All right. And it's going to take in a password, which is a string. It's going to return. We're going to do a const strong regex. And I got this off Stack Overflow because I do not know how. Regex is like my kryptonite. I remember I learned it in my boot camp, and that was the one area where I struggled in. It's so confusing. All right, so you definitely want to go over to the GitHub and copy over this. So this is strong regex. So I want to try to break this down and see if I can remember. So I believe this part here, this checks and see our password is going to have at least one lowercase letter. And then this one here in this parentheses is going to check if one of the characters is uppercase. And then here is going to check if there's at least one number. And then I believe this one is at least one special character. And then here's checking to see if is at least 8 characters long. So right here, let's do const medium regex, and that's going to equal that there. All right, and this one seems a little bit longer, but it's actually just checking to see if it hits 2 of the following. So if it's lowercase, uppercase, or number, and at least 6 characters long. All right, so now we need to do our if check. So down here, we're just going to do if our strong regex.test, and we're testing in our password. We're going to set password strength to strong. And then else if it's medium, we're going to set it to medium. And then else is just going to be set to weak. Okay, so this is very self-explanatory. I need to over-explain that there. All right, so now we need our on submit. So let's do a const, and then it's going to return So first thing we're going to do if check to make sure that our password matches our confirmed password. Okay, so we're going to do if our values dot password is not equals to our values dot confirmed password. That's when we're just going to just set password mismatch to true. All right. And now we need our else. We're just going to set password mismatch to false. And then also handle submit our values. And that handle submit function is coming from our multi-step form component that we're sending over via props. All right, so we're going to do a div in here. And inside this div, we're going to have an h3 with the class name of text3xl, font bold. And in here, we're just going to say choose a password. All right, and then underneath here, this is where we're going to have a p tag, the class name, text gray 500, and then text small, and then margin top 3. In here, we're just going to use the little ninja emoji, and it's going to just say, make sure you choose a strong one. Take a look at this. All right. Underneath this p tag, that's when we're going to have a div with a class name of margin top 10. And in here, this is where we're going to have our form. So same thing like the other ones, we're going to start off with our form component from Shadcn. And this takes in, we got to spread out our form. So dot form. We have to do our regular form element like that. And this is where we add our on submit. On submit, that's going to be form dot handle submit on submit. Right. And this also can have a class name of space yx. I mean, it says space y10. All right, so we need our form field. So let's actually go grab one from one of our other components here, so we can have a little head start. Just grab this one here and copy that, and then head over to step 3. And now let's paste that in there. All right, so we got first name, but we're not going to actually use that one. So this one's going to be password. All right, and the form label is just going to say password. All right, and then we're also going to have an on change on the submit. All right, cool. So we got our form control. Right underneath our form control, this is where we can have our form message. And underneath our form message, this is where we're going to do an if check. So whenever we type into this field, if it's not like a strong password, we want to show underneath here, you know, if your password is strong, weak, medium. So right underneath our form message here, I'm going to paste that in there, give that a save. So we're going to have brackets, password. Let me just maybe zoom out some. I think it'll be better. There we go. All right, so a password strength, and then we're going to do and then parentheses. This is where we're going to return a p tag. And here's the class name. And what we're doing is rendering the class name out conditionally. So if the password strength is strong, that's when the text is going to be green 500. And if the password strength is medium, it's going to be yellow, and then else is going to be red. And then this here is going to show password strength, and then we're just using our state here, password strength. So now, as you can see, our password is weak. All right, and then once we, as you can see, we can still type, but it doesn't have that special character either, and it doesn't have a uppercase. There we go. So that's when the password is strong. All right, making sure that works. All right, so underneath this form field here, this is where we're going to have another form field, and same as before, just a regular form field, but the name is going to be our confirmed password. Form label is going to be confirmed password, placeholder confirmed password here, and then type password. And make sure you add this form message in there as well. With that, we should have our confirmed password there. And now we just need to do our message at the bottom here if our password mismatch. In here, it's just going to say passwords do not match. And what we can do is actually just head over to step 1 or 2, just trying to save us some time here. And we could just probably actually let's do step number 2 because this has both buttons, because this one's going to have 2 buttons as well. Let's copy this over, this div, and then head over to step 3. And right underneath here, we're going to have that, but we're going to switch this up a bit. But instead of back and continue, we're going to have our back button. It's going to have our on click on back, have our variant secondary. But here for our button type, it's going to be type submit, but it's just going to say submit. All right, so with that, we are complete with step number 3. So what we're going to do is head over to our page first, and let's go ahead and switch everything back. Actually, sorry, I keep getting confused. Our multi-step form, and let's switch this back to step number 1, and then switch this to step number 3. All right. That should go back to number 1 and then 3. Okay, so now we have to do our server actions and get all of this working so that way we can save our user to our database once this form is submitted. So we're going to install a package called Next-Action. And this is basically so that way we can define type safe server actions. Look, type safe server actions. Whoa, they changed their site from the last time I used it. Oh man, I hope I hope nothing changed. All right, so we already got Zod, so we just need this command here. All right, let's head back, and now let's see. So it says we have to make a instantiate a new client inside of our lib folder. Let's go ahead and copy that, and then inside of lib here. Let's see what they named it. At the safe-action, I'm going to paste that in there. And now we can start using it. So this is how you use it here. All right, so now we got that installed. So I say since we're already installing packages, might as well install our last package we're going to be using, and that's going to be React Hot Toast. npm I React Hot Toast. npm I React Hot Toast. All right, and we can actually close out of this. It's really easy to set up, so we're going to close out of that, and we can close out of our multi-form, and then we're going to make a folder on our root. It's going to be called providers. All right, we'll do toast -provider.tsx. All right, I'm going to paste that in there. We're just going to make this a client component. We're going to import toaster from React Hot Toast, and this is where we're just going to return toaster. All right, so now we can head over to our layout, and we can just add that inside of here. All right, give that a save. All right, so now I think it is time to do our server action. So inside of server, we're going to create a folder, and this is going to be called actions. All right, so in our case, we're just going to have a register action and a login action. So we can just do register.ts. All right, and I'm just going to paste that in there, and I'll just go over it. It's nothing too crazy. So at the top, make sure you add your use server, and then we're importing register schema, action client from our lib, bcrypt, database from our db file, eq from drizzle.orm, and then users from our schema. All right, and then we're going to exports cons register account, and then action client. So if you head over to action client docs, this is how they start their server action here. So action client.schema, and then it takes in the schema, and in our case, that's our register schema there. And then it also take a .action, and then that's when we're doing a push input, and then we're sending over everything. So we're sending over our email, password, last name, first name, skill level, and location. So here is just hashing the password before it stores inside of our database. We're using bcrypt for that. And then here we're just checking to see if there's a user already with that email inside of our database. So it's going to put them under existing user. And if it is, that's when we're going to return an error saying, looks like you already got an account, buddy. Go log in. All right. So if it isn't an existing user, that's when it's going to come down here. And that's when we're going to do a db.insert. And we're going to insert our values that we're getting from our register form. And then if everything is successful, that's when we're going to return a success message saying account created successfully. So very simple server action. It's not much to it. So now let's go ahead and do our login one since we're here. So head over to actions and then just do a login.ts. All right, so I'm going to paste this one as well. Same thing, make sure to use server at the top. And this is taking all of our imports, but I believe it's taking in sign in from auth and is also taking in redirect. So I believe those are only two differences in this one. And then a login schema as well. All right, so we start off our server action the same way. Take it, but parse input, we're doing email and password. All right, and here we're just finding that user inside of our database with the email. And then if the user or the user password is not correct, that's when it's just going to say invalid email or password. All right, and then here we're just doing a password match. So this is going to compare the password given inside of our form. It's going to match it with the password inside of our database. And if it's mismatched, that's when it's going to return this invalid email or password there. But if everything works out, that's when we're going to do an await sign in. And this sign in is coming from Next-Auth off right there. And that's when we're just going to sign in with the email, with the credentials, email, password. We're going to do a redirect false because down here we're going to redirect to home page. And then we're going to return a logged in successfully, which I don't even think is running actually. We can actually, let's get rid of that. All right, so now that we got our server actions, we can head over to components, our multi-step form. And now we have access to a new hook from Next-Safe action, and it's called use action. All right, so now we can come down here and we can put that hook to use. So we're going to do a const execute. It's going to equal use action. And it's going to take in our register account server action. Then we're going to do comma, brackets. And now we could do on success. It's going to take in our data. And we could do an if check. So if our data dot, so you could just do dot and then you get all these auto completes. So this error message is the same error message that's inside of our server action. So as we're checking to see if there's an error, that's where we're going to do a toast. All right. So yeah, that's going to return in toast that's saying that there's an error. So let's do import use router. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and grab that router from our use router. We're going to do const router equal use router. Okay. So now we can do a router dot push, and then we can push our home page like that. Because our error message inside of our register account, we check, it just says that it looks like you already have an account, please log in. And that's when it's going to push us to the login page. Okay. So now we need an else. So we're going to do an else if our data.success. That's when we're going to show a success. So we're going to do a toast.success. And that's what it's going to show our data.success. And that's the success message inside of our server action. All right. And then we could do also do a router.push login. Login. I don't know why I did home. Sorry. Login. I think we just add a question mark there. I should get rid of that error. Okay, so we got that, and now as you can see, we just structured out this execute hook that we haven't used that, and that's what we're going to use in our final submit here. So since we're taking in our values inside of our final submit, we're going to make sure we do a z.infer. This is where we're just going to execute. So it's the same execute that we're structuring out this use action hook. We're just going to execute our values. Okay, and we also got to import z from Zod. All right, so we can actually test this out now. Let's see, guys. So type in my name, Tony Rogers, email. I'm just going to do just a random email, location, Raleigh, and continue. So we got the step number 2, and then intermediate, continue, password. Okay, so we're getting a password that do not match, which is good. So I did that on purpose. So now let's actually do have it match, and now submit. Okay, account created successfully. It pushed us to login, but I clicked it twice. So what we're gonna do is, what I say we do is we disable that button. As you can see, while it was loading, I clicked it twice, and it made my account. But then it also gave me the error that the account was created already because I clicked it before it got done loading, before it got finished executed. So as you can see, we should have our user inside of our database, which is good. All right, so disable form state. That form state is submitted, and then it pushes back to home. To login. So let's go ahead and create this login form. Actually, inside of auth, we're going to create a file, and it's going to be called login. And this is going to be our page.tsx. All right, so we can just export a page there. All right, and we can actually have a class name to this div, and it's going to be flex, justify center, item center, and also a height of screen. All right, and we're going to return our login form there, which we haven't created yet. So this video was primarily for the multi-step form. So if you guys want to copy over this login form component, you're going to see that it's a lot very similar to our multi-step form. We're using Zod, we're using React Hook Form, Zod Resolver, our login schema. So I'll go over it real quick. So inside of components auth, we can create a file, and this is going to be called login-form.tsx. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in there because, like I said, this video is primarily for the multi-step form, but I will go over it. It's very similar to our multi-step form. We use a bunch of stuff that we use inside of that form that we've been using this entire project. So honestly, it's nothing that you guys probably couldn't have done yourselves by just looking at the multi-step form. So we made it a client component, and we're importing all of our imports there, and these imports are very similar to the ones we did inside of our other forms. And here we're using our use form hook with our default values, and we're connecting it with Zod using this Zod resolver, and we're using our login schema for this one. We can get rid of this. We don't need this error there, that state there. I think I was just doing some debugging, ran into some issues. So here we are structuring out execute and status from our use action hook. So in our previous form, we just structured out our execute. So status we can actually use, and we use it down here for our button. So we can do status, and if it's executing, that's when we can just render stuff out conditionally. So in this case, we are using it on our button. So if the status is executing, that's when it shows logging in. So if I don't have the form imported yet on the page. Let's go ahead and import that form here. Login form from our components, and then save that. All right. We should see that here. There we go. All right. And so we click that and it just says login, and we also get our form validation as well because that is coming from our schema. We are getting some errors here for some reason. Hold on. All right, so as you can see, we are returning our toast.error, and it's going to show our error message inside of our server action. But if you remember, we removed that success message inside of our server action. So let's actually go add it back. Head over to login.tss inside of our actions folder. And then right under redirect, we could just add that back. And then that should get rid of those errors there. It'll probably take my computer a second. So with that, we should be done. I'm just going over it right quick, and we could just test this out to see if everything works. So we can sign up. This should take us to our register form. We probably should have added a button down here to say like if you already have an account. So let's actually copy this here. Let's copy that. And we also got to change our theme as well right quick. So in our step 1 here, or we probably should maybe do it inside of our multi-step form and then add it underneath here, just in case a user is on step 2 and they realize they already have an account. I think that would be better, right? So underneath, so as you can see, yep, we got that now. So instead of don't have an account, we'll just say already have an account. We're going to do login. All right, and this is going to take us to our login page, and I don't know why I didn't use the link tag for this. Let's do link. It's going to come from Next.js, next link. All right, so now once a user, let's see how it looks on all of the steps right quick. I'm actually going to probably, yeah, it looks good. Continue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then continue. And we're pushed to the account created successfully. So now let's try to log in. 7, 8. Log in. And it says to log in. All right, that is perfect, guys. So one thing I did notice is that it didn't show our toast for our login, which honestly we don't need. I don't think, I don't know why we're getting an error for that. I think my computer's just acting up. So inside of login form, we don't really need a toast to say that you're logged in, because I mean we're getting pushed to the home page. So what we could do is this. What we could do is actually protect our home page from so if you're not logged in, you cannot access this page. So what we'll do, instead of showing a toast here, let's get rid of this here, all of that. All right, and then also inside of our server action, all right, we're going to make this a async function, and then we're going to import auth from our auth.ts file. So import auth, that's coming from our server.auth. And now what we're going to do, we're also going to import redirect as well. That's going to come from Next Navigation. The whole reason of this is just to, instead of having that toast message saying that the user is signed in, this let the user know that they successfully signed in, because they'll have access to this route. And here we're going to do a const session. That's going to equal await auth. And then now all we got to do is do it if there's no session. That's when we're just going to redirect to login, to our login route. All right. And now in here, what we can do is just return a div, and you just have a h1 that just says authenticate. I'm trying to make sure I spell this right. Authenticated. Okay. All right. So we should see authenticated there. Give that a second. My computer's going very slow. And now we just need our logout button. So in auth, you just do log out. Let's do logout button.tsx. Paste it in there. Very simple. We're just making it a client component for important button and also sign out from Next-Auth/React. And then we just return a button with an on click. That's running our sign out function there from Next-Auth. So in here, what we can do is head over back to our, I believe this has to have brackets around it like that. And then here underneath here, we can import our logout button. All right, so that is perfect. Let's sign out. So if we click sign out, it should take us to our login page. And if we try to access, our home page here, as you can see, it redirects us right to login. So now once we sign in, we don't need a toast saying that we signed in. As you see, logging in. We don't need a toast saying that because now we know that we're signed in. All right, so there's one last thing we got to do. Let's just close out all of this stuff. And this is optional. If you guys like the theme that we currently have, which is the little black theme here, a little default theme from Shadcn, you guys can keep this. But we're actually going to change it. So let's head over to Shadcn themes. All right, themes. And here you can click on customize, and I believe we use this blue one here. And click on copy code, and we just copy that over. And all we got to do now is head over to our global CSS and replace all of this here. And keep the stuff at the bottom there. And then just paste that in there. And just like that, our theme for our website changes to blue. As you can see, the buttons change. Our little progress bar change as well. Click go to login. As you can see, our button change here as well. All right, I believe that is it, guys. If I missed anything, please let me know via LinkedIn, Discord, Twitter. If I could have did things a little bit better, also please message me as well. So yeah, that is it for this project. This was a fun one. I got a full stack project I'm working on, so that's going to be out here in a few weeks. So yeah, I'll see you guys next video, and peace.